Can you remember the key quotations from Ozymandias? Traveller, mighty, remains. It is important you regularly revise all of these key quotations from all of your poems before next year. Well, how did you do? Keep revising each poem every day. Mametz Wood by Owen Shears explores the impact of war and conflict. It recalls a battle during World War I fought by Welsh soldiers and how their buried skeletons were found many years later. It explores how these soldiers should be remembered for their bravery and sacrifice. Look at the two images of Mametz Wood. What do you notice? What can you find out about Mametz Wood? Research the battle. Why is there a monument of a red dragon there now? Can you see the hills in both pictures? How has the landscape changed? Click on the link to hear the poet himself read his poem. Owen Shears also talks about the context, why he wrote the poem. The beginning of the poem explains how farmers, for many years afterward, found bones belonging to the soldiers who had died. The foolishness of the generals and the pointlessness of the soldiers' death is revealed when we find out the soldiers were told to walk, not run, into the wood which had machine guns. The earth is compared to a soldier. The dead bodies are like splinters working their way to the surface of the skin. The final image is of the mass grave that was found of 20 men linked arm in arm. Their jaws have fallen open. This links with their heritage, as the Welsh are famous for their singing. It reminds us that only now are their voices being heard, are they being remembered for their sacrifice. Reread the poem. Research the poem online. Your introduction paragraph will need to answer the following key questions: who, what, where, when. Make some notes based on this slide. You are now going to write the introduction to your poem. You will need to answer the following questions: who, what, where, when. Explain the story of your poem. This should take you 10 minutes and 4 or 5 sentences. Don't worry if you get stuck. Some answers are on the next slide. Well, how did you do? Check your work against the answers on the slide. Do you need to add any further information to your introduction? We need to think about the story of the poem and to identify 3 quotations that will help you to tell the story of the poem. These are the quotations we have selected to help you tell the story of the poem. Practice learning the quotations using the trigger word method. We have selected these quotations for a reason. Read the following slide carefully. You will use this information to write up 3 paragraphs about this poem, telling the story of the poem, beginning, middle, and end. You are now going to write up a paragraph about the beginning of the poem, the first 3 stanzas. Look at the notes, look at the writing frame, and then try to write your own paragraph. Don't worry if you get stuck. An example is on the next slide. This should take you 10 minutes. Well, how did you do? Look at the example and see if you can add or improve your own paragraph. You are now going to write about the middle of the poem. Use the writing frame in front of you to help you. Don't worry if you get stuck, some ideas are on the next slide. This should take you 10 minutes. Well, how did you do? Look at the example and see if you can improve your own paragraph. You are now going to write about the end of the poem. Try and do this one all by yourself. This should take you 10 minutes. We are now going to write your conclusion. The conclusion is the why of the poem. Why did the poet write this poem? What influenced them to write the poem? Ask yourself, what is the poet saying about the human cost of war and conflict? What does the poet tell us about the impact on nature? What are the universal themes of the poem? Here is an example conclusion. Feel free to steal any ideas you like. Remember, your conclusion should be your cleverest idea about this poem. You should now have completed your response on the poem. Check your work. You should have written about 1.5 pages. Keep it safe. Practice remembering the 3 key quotations using your trigger words. Wasted, surface, mosaic. You need to revisit these quotations on a regular basis to try and remember them. You will be able to find out more about this poem using GCSE Pod, YouTube revision channels, and also the school Delta English revision site. Click the link above. Make sure you keep your written response safe. You will need it to revise for your GCSEs next year. Keep all of your poems in a safe place.